Everyone, welcome to session about feeds, integrating of feeds module and migrate module. My name is irinazaks. I'm web developer and open source evangelist. And today I'm gonna talk about tools and ways to manage content, moving content in and out in Drupal 8. This presentation was targeted for developers, so it doesn't have pictures, it doesn't have beautiful, UI flow. It's just black and white text to emulate terminal, the other way around. So things we're going to talk about is what migration tools are available in 2018 for Drupal 8. We'll compare feeds and migrate module and talk about why it makes sense to integrate this module and what has been done in this area so far. And then I would love to invite everyone to participate, contribute, try, test, and use these tools. This is live demo, things will break. So from the view in Bay Area, quick reminder, websites are just supporting organizations, and the goal of the website is to manage and deliver content that has been generated either within an organization or you want to bring in your news feeds, your events, your courses, and this is one of the reasons why we were building these beautiful websites. So what content we're moving in to our websites and how we're getting this content. If you want to import something, it has to be structured data, and most common formats right now are CSV, XML, and JSON. There are other formats, and we're not going to talk about them. There's, for example, standard RSS format that is still around, but it's not being used very heavily, and it's not super useful to move anything except for news. Where do we get information, and what is the source of information? So sometimes you have information that's generated within your organization. For example, list of events that your organization is going to offer for the next year or for the next semester. And I didn't mention I mostly work in higher ed, but this talk is applicable to any area of, anywhere. For example, list of events that are coming for the next upcoming year, that's something that your own organization generates, and then you can have it like usually in XML will be like, here's a list of things we want to do. Can you put it on the website very quickly? Information can come from other websites, like there's a news source and we want to integrate information from Yahoo or from Central University or from somewhere else. And sometimes you want to pull information from a database, for example, from your previous Drupal website or another Drupal website. So this is like sources. Then we're looking at things like how often do you want to update information? Is it a one-time import or is it a regular import? Like events and news, you want to have fresh information. If someone changed information, you need to put it in as quickly as possible. And other parameters that we're looking are like, do you want to preserve your previous entry? Do you want to override it? And these are things that you need to manage during any data transfer that we call either import or migration. Terminology is kind of vague. At least I don't use very strict differences. And we also want to monitor what's going on with migrations. Did things get in? How many? Was it interrupted? Did everything came in correctly? And stuff like this. And by the way, we really need to have it done on Monday. So what tools are available to meet our goals? If we're migrating from another Drupal website and we're just moving 6 or 7 to 8, there's one click upgrade button. that comes out of the box. You need to enable a couple of modules, and you can do it at any time. This is connecting to your Drupal database, and it inherits everything that was on your old website and put it on the new website. You can set more complex migrations using migrate module, and as of September of 2018, we have full-blown Feeds module that was in development for 2 years, and now you can import CSV data into any Drupal 8 site, and we have also tampers for feeds working on on the core tampers. Also, as we all know, you can write custom scripts that are much, much quicker to do. Any developer will tell you that if you need to bring your data in, I will just write a custom script for you and it will be ready by Monday. The problem is every time you need to write another custom script, and that doesn't always scale. So if you're ready for moving, I'm going to show, now we're going into live demo territory. So we had this a research center website, and hopefully it will load. We have nice clean website which had good content, and we didn't want to rebuild anything. We just wanted to run and upgrade everything from this site we needed on the new site. So what we did is, first we did the upgrade, one-time upgrade. It's going to load in a minute, and I'll talk about it. But then it turned out that from the minute when we did, so here's your one,
We're still seeing your slide.
Oops. Sorry. How do we deal with that? Okay. Let's see.
That's better.
Okay. All right. Hopefully it will display what I would like it to display. Yes, here we go. So this was our one-time migration where we clicked the button and everything, content types, taxonomies, fields, relationships, entity reference, everything was brought into Drupal 8, and we just added theme and got this beautiful Drupal 8 site. Thing that we had to configure was views and blocks, but that's a total subject for a totally different conversation, because today we're only talking about bringing in content. So once we had this new site, it turns out, as you can imagine, that somebody made some changes and we need to re-import things, and also it turned out that some things don't work as expected. For example, when we were making this migration, date conversion wasn't done correctly for custom fields, and so we had to convert all event dates were coming they were coming in, but they had incorrect format, because Drupal 8 uses ISO format, which has T in the middle, and we had our dates in previous version, like a Drupal date or something. So we had an option either to convert our data in the source to the ISO timestamp, or write custom plugin that we could plug into custom migration. And then this is migrate module, which is kind of a little bit overwhelming for a non-developer. All the code has to be written in YAML file, so you have to set up migration using Drush. Then you have to write all your conversion plugins. And then here, if you want to write a migration, you can go here, you can import probably, you can stop import, and it will give you a small timestamp saying what's going on. However, managing this huge migration didn't really work for us well. And the other most important thing is that we couldn't give this interface to content managers when they needed to keep updating things. So we worked on module feeds, and module feeds gives you a different tool set for do imports. So if you want to have an ongoing migration using feeds module, you can create a feed type, which is very similar to your content type, where you define what kind of import it is, you can give it name, and you define whether it's upload or download, whether you pull data from the URL or from the file. You can decide which parser you want to use. And then you decide on the new feed type where you want to put information. So when I add the new feed type, I say, okay, I'm going to pull from download is from URL. I'm going to have CSV files, which are not that common on the web. Mostly information comes in JSON format. And I want to put this information into nodes, or I want to put it into, maybe I want to import taxonomy, and I can decide where I can do it. So this is configuration, which seems more friendly than writing all the YAML files, which I can show you, but not today. So let's say I want to import some news into research highlights. And then Feeds module allows you to decide whether I want to update or overwrite existing nodes that I had previously imported. And this interface is very similar to Feeds in 7. Most of it has been basically ported. There were some improvements, but not too many. And some things are still not ported from 7 to 8 because it's a lot of work, and Feeds module does not have commercially organization that will support it directly commercially. So it's done through, somebody somewhere contributes something. There's a large number of different settings that you can set that are relevant to feeds more than to migrations. For example, here you can set via web interface, and via web interface is a very important part. I can say I want to pull my information every day, or I don't want to really update things. I can define some tools for auto detection feeds. This settings will be different for any parser. Like for RSS, you don't even have a parser settings. For CSV, you can say, I have tab delimited or comma delimited files. And this is done more or less on the fly. So anybody who understands data that they're putting in can configure it with an hour of training or less. And then people who own information, they can decide how often they want to update it. And that is very important. Because if this has to be done in code, then every time that we deliver a website and give it to the owner, and they say, oops, we decided we don't want to pull from this website every 15 minutes. We want only to do updates once a week now. Or we want to pull every 15 minutes, like first 3 days of semester, and then for the rest of it, we just don't want to update. If this is coded in the code, they need to bring developers back and keep changing it via code, which is expensive and inefficient. And so then after I save this feed type, new feed, I will, new feed, I have an opportunity to do mapping. And so this is where I can say I want to bring, and here's my source information. For example, I'm bringing people profiles, and I want title to be display name for whatever reason that has been decided. And here we go. And I want this to be a unique identifier, so when we repeat imports, it will be looking at this particular field and say, is it the same node or is it a different node? If you don't mark this unique identifier, then it will keep overwriting the same node again and again, and it will say, we've imported 173 profiles and you have only one record. Or you can decide that this is not good enough identifier and you want to add, I told you it's a live demo. And you can decide that you want to have a different type of mapping. However, if you already have feed type that has been predefined for you by someone, you don't need to do it again. It's being stored. And as a content manager, I don't need to deal with mapping or with tampering. Even like, for example, if I want to say, like convert case, right? If I say I need everything to be in all caps, or I don't want anything to be in all caps, I want it to be put together in the proper capitalize the first character, because sometimes people will bring in data in all caps and you don't need it. So as a content manager, I don't need to deal with this. As a content manager, I have access to content tab, and I go to feeds section, and I say, okay, I want to import new batch of people or new batch of articles. And then I say, okay, add feed, and we have two different types of feeds. So I'm going to say I would like to import new batch of people that we didn't have before, and it will be new people feed again, because I think we'll already have new people feed. And then here I can put URL, because I said that I will be getting things from some URL. I can define another feed that where I will be bringing things from the file, and I can have them both and use the one that I need depending on circumstances. So I'm going to say I want to get all these people from this URL, and I'm going to go save and import, and it goes there and it works because we don't have errors in the live demo. And once it's done, it tells me new people again has been created, and here I can see the summary of my feed, right? So I can see that something got broken. I can unlock. If things don't work correctly in the feed, I can unlock and start process again. And then I can say import and see if it will start working or not. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. So we're going to look, instead of looking at the feed that doesn't work today, because today we're doing live demo, we're going to look at something that has been imported yesterday and it is working. So here I can see that from this URL, I imported 68 nodes. Last import was 12 hours ago. A new import is scheduled for 1969, which means basically 0. There's no value. So I didn't schedule any updates. And then here, I can see a list of items that I have. And also all these items has been successfully imported into content. And if I go here, I can see that this person has been imported for the field that I mapped in the feed, and I only asked to bring in full name, first name, and last name. And all this works wonderful, except that in Feeds module, we do not have JSON parser, we do not have XML parsers, and 3 or 4 developers that are as volunteers supporting this module has been working for 2 years to get it done. So right now, we have a couple of different options to continue development of this module. And before we go into options, I want to kind of talk about what is happening when we are moving data. So we have data source, then it has to be processed, and then you have to have destination container. And we just saw how we do it in feeds, and then like for the migrate, I can't do the demo because it's going to take 2, 4, whatever hours. And big difference between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, that in 7 both migrate and feeds were contributed module. So you just pick the module that is right for you, you master it, and you use it. However, in 8, migrate module has been moved into core, which means that all the parsers and all the processors are already in core, and we don't really need to build them again. The challenge is that Migrate is built for developers, so it has some minimum UI, but it's like very, very limited and not user-friendly. So it doesn't really work for our content managers. We can't use it. So there's this brilliant idea that we don't have to have two things going in parallel. We're going to keep building parsers for feed, and at the same time, Migrate team will be struggling with requests like, oh, why don't we have a better UI? Because once in a while someone says, oh, why don't we have better UI? And it's like there's still 24 hours in one day. So we've identified some feed-specific issues that are kind of relevant only to feeds, and said maybe we can find the way to collaborate between Migrate developers and feeds developers to come up with new module that will have feeds UI that is designed for site builders and content managers that can connect to Migrate engine. And so we launched Feeds Migrate module. It's on Drupal.org. And this time, because module is designed for end users, we decided that maybe this time we'll start with UIs. We will not start with asking developers to code what they think is right. We will give them like guidance, say this is what we would like to see. Is this possible to build it? And so if you go to the page for Feeds Migrate, Feeds_Migrate, there are a couple of links. One is for documentation, one is for test instance. I'm going to go through each of the issues that we already have in queue. I will try to do live demo on the patch that was released yesterday, so I can do this demo today. And then I'll open for questions. Okay? So first thing that we were building is basic UI, similar to feeds. And the biggest challenge, if any of developers are here, is that unlike feed, migration has to belong to the group. So the way migrations are built, there's either default migration group, or you can create your own migration group, but it has to live under migration group. And without that, it won't work. So we had to add the new tab include a migration group into settings, which it's not really important for people who are using Feeds Migrate, but it has to be there. And then the rest of it's the same familiar Feeds 7 UI. Then we have added, and I'll demo it hopefully today, the configuration screen where you can pick up your fetcher, parser, and processor. And we're hoping that we will be able to add authentication option, because it's another very important tool that is missing in Feeds UI right now. So this is the next screen that needs to be built. This screen is not built yet. We're looking for people who might want to be interested in building these screens. This screen actually works. This does not work. Then there's the next UI that deals with mapping, where we can put whatever comes from JSON into whatever is destination for our data. And now, because we're talking directly to Migrate, we don't have to limit ourselves to node or taxonomy. We can put things into paragraphs, we can put things into images. I know that there was an interest in building mapper to migrate images from older versions into new Drupal 8 imaging system and many other sources. This is what's on the wish list, because we hoped to get it done. It's very cool. It should be Ajax based. It's like all this new fancy thing. You drag your file or you enter URL, and it will automatically populate the source drop-downs with data structure that is already sitting in your source. How cool would that be? If somebody wants to do that, please raise your hand. Any developers, yay, okay, I know your face. Face recognition works very well these days. And then the next screen, again, that has to be built is tampering. So processors are already in place, but we need to have only UI that will talk to these processors. And again, here's a wish list for improvement. In the Drupal 7, we have this huge list of tampers that lists all the fields that you have. And if we can add here this lovely search button, this one, that will make everyone's life much, much easier. Most of these things are already available in UIs that deal with building content types. So if there's a developer who is familiar with the functions and all the other stuff, and they want to join the initiative, that would be awesome, because then we will have this working for everyone sooner rather than later. And then again, adding tampers or processors, the way they're called in Migrate, this is a good interface that has been proven to be very useful, and we don't need to reinvent the wheels that actually work. Then you save the type, and then similarly as in Feeds, you add an actual importer where you define parameters of, like you will define URL, how often you need to import, and all these things. And all this has been documented, and it is available between Drupal.org and Google Slides, so anyone has access, anyone who is interested in making this happen, documentation is ready. We hopefully will continue working on it with the group that we started. So James Dixon is co-maintainer, I'm co-maintainer, and we're very grateful to Lucas Haddon, who is maintainer of Migrate, and for Accra Media for allowing him to work with us on the project, and Yuri Van Koppen, who is Feeds maintainer, and the team working together. Well, it takes what it takes to build it. It is a very steep learning curve, and our approach to address this problem is we have weekly meetups where anyone can join on Drupal Slack, and the URL of Drupal Slack is then the Feeds module, and maintainers are there to answer your questions. It's not like, oh, anyone around here, nobody knows anything. People are there every Thursday is from 11 Pacific time. It's a good time for both people in Europe and over entire US. So that was why we picked that time. And we have a couple of other presentations that James did, and these are our hope for next steps. We want to thank Pantheon very much for providing all the instances for testing and the tool set. And we even have Kanban board for the issues, so you don't have to click through text. We now have everything in cards. And now I'm going to try, at least I will attempt, to show the demo of the new module. So we have modules migrate module, and if we want to, oh, sorry. Okay, hold on. This, right? Okay, so feed migrate mapper has to belong to a migration group. So when we're setting, we're not sure if we're going to call it migration mapper. Terminology is still in the works. So here is where we are right now. Okay, bad camp test. Cross fingers. So now we can select fetch or either file or HTTP. It's a little bit more explanatory than download, upload. I get confused all the time. And these parsers are already there. We don't need to code it anymore. And there's like this huge list of destinations that we will probably need to limit, because you don't want to allow innocent users to import into any entity. But if we pick the right entity, for example, Node, or if we want to do a file import, we can do file import directly. Or we can do taxonomy or anything. So I'm going to try to find Node, and then I can select node type, and I'm going to click save. And with all the prayers, it did save. And this is super exciting because 3 days ago it was not working yet. So there's a lot of work that went into this thing. And then this is another huge achievement. I can go and edit things now. And here will be the button map, and here will be the button tamper. I don't know, maybe next week, maybe 3 weeks from now, maybe 3 months from now, nobody knows. And then if I want to run a migration, and then I can go to Feeds Migrate, and here I can add importer, where I can import things, I can roll back, and also I can edit it, and I can say, please, I'm saying I can define here which one, I've defined one of the migration sources, and I'll try to do it again. And here I can enter actual URL where I'm actually entering data. Okay? And then if I want to add new importer, I will be selecting one of the mappers that I predefined in the previous screens. Okay? Does it make sense? Okay. So, for example, if I want to import all my articles, I will tell, I don't really need old articles. I want to delete all articles and keep only fresh material, which is usually not the case, but sometimes you would want to do it. And then here you would add URL. And now if I want to import, I'm going to click import, and it will, instead of going to feeds module at the backend, it will go directly to migrate engine and run import for me. And if I go into content, now I have my articles imported. Okay, so apparently there was only one, but here it is. So with this said, I'm happy to presentation mode to answer any question that you might have.
So, in the Feeds Migrate module, do you hope to be able to take an existing migration, maybe something that was produced by the core upgrade system, and take it over with Feeds Migrate and edit it?
It's a very good question. The answer is I don't know.
Repeat the question through the recording.
Oh, so the question was, if there was a migration that has been built using YAML files, can Feeds Migrate module take it over and change configuration? The answer is maybe, if there will be a developer who will code this capability. Out of the box, we can execute any migration. Right now it's being linked, or we're working on it being linked. But we don't know if we would want to allow Feeds Migrate to change configuration that has been built with YAML files. One of the reasons is that Migrate module is much, much larger and have many more capabilities. And sometimes you configure chained import, so there will be different processes are dependent on, there's a long chain of processes that are dependent on each other. And if we, in order to build interface that will allow you to work through the entire chain, might be a very long process.
So is the goal of this migrate feeds module sort of thinking in it has a which generates mistakes, which could also potentially run directly in the migrate module? Or is it going to store all of those changes just in config for its own for its own migration?
It is in development, so there is no. So the question was, will Feeds Migrate store all the configuration in YAML, and will it be possible to run migration via Drush? Is that the question? So the answer is, it's work in progress, and again, depending on how many developers will jump on it and build it, the answer will be either yes or no. I think that right now, because you can execute it using execute button, I'm pretty sure that if you know if you can set up correct configuration Drush command based on what has been built, most likely the answer is yes, but I can't guarantee. But this is a very good question, because that's something that we need to put into like requirements or specs when we're asking people to build the module, because I can see very good use case for that.
Do you have a roadmap towards the first alpha release? Have you already created all the issues that you'll need to get there?
We created most of the issues. This presentation has links to most of the issues, and actually what's on the screen right now lists the issues that we have. There is a roadmap, but it's kind of minimum roadmap. And all the questions that you're asking right now, we'll go back on Thursday. I will say, hey guys, there's like lots of new ideas, and we will most likely put them in issues. And this is open source project. So if you want to create an issue on this subject, you can do it right now.
I'll ask you a question. The UI that you were showing to, is most of that sort of work where you've been creating the UI in advance without it actually being wired up to the functionality behind it?
The functionality is already in there. The driver behind this module is that we have functionality, but we don't have access to it. And by building this module, we are connected to something that is already inside this black box. And what we would like to do is to be able to press the buttons, but all the mechanisms and all the wiring is already inside. So the only development work that we need to do is to make sure that whatever is inside has good hooks with Drupal 8 UI system. And because we have Migrate maintainer on board, he already made a couple of adjustments to Migrate Tools and Migrate Plus, where we said, well, if you want to allow us to do this, these are changes that we need to make. And these changes were already made and committed, I don't remember whether in Migrate Tools or Migrate Plus. Any questions? Thank you very much.